I got this bedroom set for free. It had a failing finish, and filthy seems like an understatement, but free's free. I'm not complaining. These are things that you can fix, and I'm a solo mum flipping furniture so that I can fund my dream home. So come along for the ride if you want to see exactly how I refinish this set. Now, when I say filthy, I mean I have never seen this amount of dust accumulated on a piece of furniture in my whole time flipping. My vacuum cleaner wasn't actually strong enough to remove most of this dust. I had to scrub it off and then come in with my vacuum cleaner. Once I'd removed a bulk of the cobwebs and dust, I removed all of the handles, and I had no intention of reusing these handles because they gave me low-key boob vibes. Because I was going to be spraying this set and I had intended to spray the sides of the drawers and inside the drawers, I removed all of the drawer runners. I then gave everything a spray down using Crud Cutter. Crud Cutter is a concentrated degreaser, so it will cut through dirt, grease and grime that's on the surface, and when you've got something that's especially dirty like this, it's a fantastic option. The only problem with Crud Cutter and degreasing products though is that they can leave a residue behind. So in order to remove any residue that might be sitting on the surface, once you have given it a wipe over, you need to come back over and wipe everything down with just some plain piping hot water. You can see here on this drawer front, this is one that I hadn't wiped over with hot water yet. So that is the residue that's sitting on the surface from the degreasing product. So that's what you're removing. Once I'd finished cleaning the bedsides, I followed the same steps on the dresser as well, making sure to get in and underneath the piece and just have a look at the filthy water when I was done. Look. For this set, I didn't want a completely solid painted look. I wanted to have some contrast with natural timber, so I'm using my Carbide scraper here to remove the existing finish off the tops. For those that are unfamiliar, a tungsten carbide blade or carbide scraper is essentially a very sharp blade that you scrape across the surface of the piece to remove finish. It can remove thick layers of paint, thick glosses, varnishes, things like that, and 9 times out of 10 you will be able to remove an existing finish with a carbide blade. Once I'd removed a majority of that varnish with the carbide blade, I started sanding, and I went from 120 grit up to 180, and then I finished with 240 grit. To ensure you're getting optimum adhesion, anywhere that you are going to be painting on your furniture needs to be scuff sanded. Scuff sanding is essentially creating a key or some micro texture on the surface so that when your primer is applied, it actually locks in to that texture and creates a surface that's ready for paint. If you skip this step and you just paint straight onto a glossy surface, be that a pre-painted surface or a varnish glossed surface, what you will find is your primer will just chip off and it will scratch off very easily. So your paint will fail over time. This set definitely had some nicks and scratches that needed to be filled. So I'm mixing up some 2-part gap filler here. And if you've never used 2-part gap filler, there is literally 2 parts. Normally 1 part is in the tin and then you have a little small tube of blue or red activator. Now the more activator that you put into the paste mix, so the main body of the mix, the quicker this stuff is going to set. So if you haven't used this before, then I would highly recommend only putting the smallest amount of activator in so that you've got more work time. And if you've got a lot of things that you are trying to fill, lots of scratches, lots of dents, then I would recommend mixing it up in small batches. Gap filler is great for fixing anything that's a little bit more structural. So think larger scratches, larger holes in things, but you do need to keep in mind that this stuff does sand down to white. So it's optimum to use it on something that you are going to be painting. Once I'd sanded all of those filled spaces down smooth and removed all of the dust, it was time to prime. And I'm using Zinsser water-based primer here with my Wagner Flexio 690W sprayer. By far, in my opinion, the most efficient way to paint furniture is with a spray gun. Not only will you be able to get coats of paint on in minutes, you will consistently get a professional factory finish on your furniture. It is a little bit of an investment, but there are plenty of cheap and cheerful guns out there, and I would highly recommend it if you are thinking about furniture flipping for profit. I get lots of questions about what type of paint I use on my furniture, and I use a water-based enamel. This one is by Dulux. It is their Aqua Enamel, and I'm using the color Antique, which ended up being a happy accident. I thought that this was more of a taupe tone on the swatch, but as you can see, it came out more of a green. If you've been following me for a while though, you know I love a green moment, especially on bedroom furniture, so this was no big deal. I did 2 coats of the Aqua Enamel. I sanded in between each of those coats with the 800 grit sanding pad that you see here, and you just have to make sure that when you do this sand, this light sand, that you remove all of the dust. But this is how you get the smoothest finish possible, because it will knock down any texture from the spray gun, it will knock out any dust or debris that may have landed in your paintwork while it was drying, drying. And if you have used a roller or a brush to apply your paint, it will knock down any brush marks or roller marks. To enhance the natural beauty of the timber and to really make that grain pop, I chose FIDDES hard wax oil in matte clear to seal. This is an incredibly durable product. It can be used on high traffic areas. It's water resistant, stain resistant, it's food safe, and it's toy safe. So this one can be used on kitchen benches or dining tables. FIDDES hard wax oil comes in a range of colors and sheen levels, and they even have an ultra raw version which will keep your timber looking a little bit more like freshly sanded timber. It's definitely a less is more product. There's around 20 to 24 square meters of coverage in a 1 litre tin, which I think is phenomenal. You can see here that I'm just using a 100 by 4 millimeter nap roller to apply, but you can also apply with a brush if you feel more comfortable doing that. I applied 2 coats of the hard wax oil and sanded in between each of those coats with a brown paper bag, and I get lots of questions about this. This is just one of the brown shopping bags that you get from Coles or Woolies. I rip a piece off, I lay it flat, and I sand the surface down. It's just a non-abrasive alternative to sandpaper. My next step was to reinstall the drawer rollers on each of the drawers, and I'm just going through and spraying down each of the wheels on the runner as I go with some silicone spray. And this can be the difference between your drawers sliding smoothly and feeling a little bit rough when you're pulling them in and out. For some reason, my camera did not record me while I was installing some new hardware, but I just chose an antiqued brass pull for this set. Okay guys, here's a quick reminder of where we started out on this set, and this is where we are now. I love that this was a happy accident. It may not have been the taupe tone that I had envisioned for this set in the beginning, but it just goes to show sometimes things don't go to plan and it still works out in the end. I think all of the elements on this set work really cohesively together. You've got that beautiful natural timber grain up top, the aged brass handles, there's a subtle sheen throughout, but as always, I would love to know what you guys think. So jump in the comments and let me know. 1, what would you be selling this set for? And 2, is it a nail or a fail?